But they found all the comparable locations in the environs of Los Angeles, downtown, and in the cruddier neighborhoods.
Now you're talking about mean streets.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So all of that. I mean, I have to say about Marty. I mean, he was a really quick learner. I mean, anybody who had anything interesting or useful to say to him, he would take it up and he would improve upon it. And I mean, to this day, I think that's true. I mean, he's just a totally passionate filmnik. That's all you can say about him. And that can be, I guess, it can be annoying. I mean, people who are sort of totally compulsive are not the easiest people to work with or to be around and all that stuff. But it also is true that that passion gets into the soul and spirit of the people working with him. So you're just carried along like on the force of his own convictions about movies.
My question, it's just an observation, not a criticism exactly, was that Scorsese's early films and maybe some of the middle ones were as tightly coiled as their mood was.
Yeah.
They did not go in a direct Billy Wilder fashion toward the toward the ending. I was on the selection committee of the New York Film Festival in 1973, and one of the films, one of the other films was Badlands, but one of the films that was submitted was Mean Streets. And the committee of 5 was split on the film.
Really?
Yes. Andrew Saris, who had worked next door to Marion Billings, who had been Marty's publicist and sort of den mother on 57th Street in the late 60s, saw it and said he didn't know how to tell a story in his short films, and he still can't come to the point now. And Arthur Mayer, who was surely 90 at that time and had been among many other things, the owner and presenter of B and Z movies at the Rialto Theater on 42nd Street. It was my job. To go back and see the film a second time with Arthur, who hadn't seen it yet. And so I was chalking it up because I wanted the picture in the film festival. And at the end, he said, "Oh, it's it's too violent. All those words." He said, "I used to hear them only in my theater, not on the screen." And he said, and of course it could be a half hour shorter. But then Arthur thought the great train robbery could be a half hour shorter. But he did agree to vote for the film, and that's how it got in the festival. But all I'm saying is that both Saris and Mayer thought that the film was, in its narrative, discursive, and these were both people who'd seen all the European films of the '60s and knew how discursive a film could be.
I'm sort of with them. Of all of Marty's movies, all his major statement movies, I have the most trouble still with that movie. I mean, it just has never reached out, grabbed me, and moved me the way a lot of his other movies have. And I don't know whether that's just sort of youthful folly and indulging of himself. I think it's an important movie, but I have never found myself really gripped by it and taken up by it the way I have by some of his other movies. I mean, but that's not to say it's not. Certainly was festival worthy.
Well, Marty talks about this in the book, so this might be a place to come in. There are those who think that a minute into the movie where Harvey Keitel is lying in bed and the first seconds of the Ronettes' "Be My Baby" blasts onto the screen is one of the great uses of music in a movie that has an eclectic and downright obscure idea of what sort of rhythm and blues and other pop songs from the 50s and 60s would fit with these
Yeah.
these young men from Little Italy.
I got to tell you, I mean, a few years ago, I did a film on Marty. You know, did an interview, and we put this film together. Played on Turner Classics, I guess. And Warner Brothers wanted to put it out as a DVD. And they said, here's $125,000. You know, just clear it for DVD. Just DVD. We'd already cleared it for TV. We spent every penny and another $50,000 more on the music, because the music isn't just the music. It's layered and layered and layered. So that, you know, there's, you know, there'll maybe be 3 songs kind of piled on top of one another. You got to pay the rights for every one of those. I mean, it was a nightmare to get this thing cleared. And I would say, and I think I do say in the book, that, you know, Marty, in terms of historical knowledge and so forth, he's at least as knowledgeable about music as he is about film. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm not anywhere. I mean, I can keep up with him on movies, but I can't keep up with him on popular music of that period and what it means to him. And he can tell you when he heard it and coming out of somebody's window as he's walking down the street and remembering it, you know, 10 years later. I mean, it's an amazing sort of idiot savant kind of way of looking at popular culture. I mean,
don't call him an idiot savant just because you don't share his savantness.
Yeah.
Doesn't everyone here remember where you were when you heard some song when you were 15?
Not me.
Be My Baby, for example. But I'll just say that this is what I recall at the time, and I believe it's in Keith Richards' autobiography, that he complains that Scorsese promised to pay the Rolling Stones some large amount of money for the use of Jumpin' Jack Flash in Be My Baby, and goddamn it, he didn't. What I recall from what I recall Marty saying at the time was that he paid $750 for Be My Baby and $15,000 for Jumpin' Jack Flash, which would have been almost 2% of the budget of the movie's budget.
That's right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right that Marty's knowledge of music and film is encyclopedic and passionate and obsessive, and that whereas a lot of kids who became older remember acutely every song from a 10-year period when they were absorbing everything, including movies.
Yeah, right.
But Marty is also, you know, knowledgeable and feeling about well, especially Italian opera.
There's that.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be going into Bach exactly, but
it would be hard to know. I mean, because his youth, the way music seems to work for him or occur to him in the way of, it's almost instinctive, you know. I mean, it's like, oh, I know, I remember, you know, and then he goes and gets it. I think I say in the book, there's a little, it's like Asperger's syndrome, you know.
The one question he didn't care to answer.
Right. Well, he'd never heard of it before.
And he wasn't going to commit, he wasn't going to agree with you that he necessarily was, you know, gifted with it.
Yeah. But the thing about doing a book like this with Marty, I mean, I can't even remember how many sessions we had or how many hours we put in on this. There was one gigantic one toward the end of it where we started at, I think, 2 in the afternoon and ended at 10 at night. And he just moved into his new building, and the workmen were sawing and hammering behind us, and that was really fun. I mean, you know, in the sense that Marty actually loves to talk about all this stuff. I mean, it's not as if, you know, he's shy, and some directors, you know, just don't really, they're so instinctive sort of in their decision making that they don't really absolutely recall how it is that they came to do something in the film. But Marty has, it seems to me, like almost total recall of how things came up and how things happen.
And he's willing to recall it all.
Yeah, he has very, very, very good recall. I mean, it's really kind of amazing to me because, you know.
No, I mean he's not shy or embarrassed.
Never, never. I mean, the one thing about, let's say you're talking about some really obscure movie, you know, which he, of course, has seen. And I would say, being, you know, a professional critic, I'd say, yeah, but, you know, it's really not so good, right? And then he goes, yeah, but what about the scene where, you know, and he will, you know, unerringly pick out, you know, the one halfway decent scene in the movie and refer to it, and that's like okay with him, you know, as long as it's got something, a scene or. You know.
That is the James Agee school of film criticism. That he would.
You think so?
Well, that Agee was known for picking some sublime 30 seconds in what he acknowledged was an otherwise ridiculous movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know, in the you know, nearly 400 pages of your book, does he dump on any movies?
No. I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of moments where he says, well, yeah, I mean, it's not. But then he always comes up with the saving grace moment, you know, the moment that makes him recall it and love it.
There's not a film that offends him morally, aesthetically, politically.
I don't think so. Mm-hmm. You know.
These last sessions that you were talking about, did you have a punch list of things that you needed to
Well, by that
cover?
time, I mean, see, we did the book over a period of 2 years of meetings. And what would happen would be, you know, I would get them transcribed, and I would look always, when I was going back, say, okay, we're missing something on this film or that film, or I want to press him a little on this point or that point. But the trouble with that, with Marty, was we would always vow to, you know, stick to whatever the agenda was that night. And, you know, 20 minutes into it, you know, something would come up, and we'd go hieing off in some whole direction I hadn't actually prepared for. And so there was, when I got all the transcripts together and started, you know, editing the thing, there were enormous amounts of repetitive material. You know, we'd done that already, but I'd forgotten that we'd done that. And then there were, you know, lots of problems of rearranging the order of the material so that it wasn't, you know, I mean, let's say we're talking about Taxi Driver, and some great thing would come up about, I don't know, Kundan, and there it would be in the middle of Taxi Driver. So you had to move it and put it in the right place and make sure you weren't repeating yourself. I found it, oddly enough, you know, one of the hardest books I've ever written, just because it was so much more of an editorial chore than it was a writing chore. And actually, I will never do another book like this. I mean, you know, it's just too hard, you know. It was really difficult to. I mean, it's easy enough to follow the order of the movies, which I did. That's pretty much in the order that he made them. But there are generalizations that emerge all over the place, and then you have the choice of, well, does it belong here with Raging Bull, or does it actually belong here with Taxi Driver, let's say, something like that.
You are so
what?
Protestant. I don't know.
What does that mean?
I mean, you want to impose the strong narrative structure that, as we said, Scorsese often that he resists or that eludes him.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, anywhere in the book does it say, remember when we were talking about this thing?
Yeah.
And then your brackets, page 168.
No. The thing that was interesting about the two of us is that our backgrounds are so dissimilar. You know, I was born and raised in a suburb in the Middle West, you know, kind of white picket fence, and everybody was terribly respectable and, you know, and very polite, and there was no crime, and, you know, and I, of course, you know, once I came to New York and began to appreciate the kind of circumstances Marty was brought up in, you know, it became enviable to me. Gee, yeah, like excitement, you know. And by the same token, you know, he said to me, I mean, I so much envy you